Hi and welcome to CX Today. My name is Shelly and today I'm delighted to be joined by four excellent customer experience analysts to run through all the latest news from the space. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, Rebecca Wetteman, CEO and Principal Analyst at Valoir, Shelly Kramer, President and CEO at Kramer and Company, and Finbarr Begley, Senior Research Analyst at Cavell. It's great to have you all join me, and let's get right on into it. And I want to start with AWS, which last week, or maybe by the time this goes out 2 weeks ago, launched the next generation of Amazon Connect. The release signals a major platform re-architecture with AWS embedding first-party AI across the CCaaS platform. I know actually that AWS considered changing the name of the platform altogether to underline the significance of the release. Eventually they decided not to do that, but it's interesting nonetheless. But yeah, it'd be great to get all of your thoughts on this. I don't know if maybe Finbarr, if you want to go first on this.
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting sort of announcement just in terms of thinking about legacy and thinking about all these platforms that are kind of put together. And then you've got Amazon coming along and just putting in the time to say, well, no, that's what we had before. Let's try and draw a line under that and start with a sort of blank slate that integrates into everything. And I think that's a really interesting sort of decision point and also just message that they're kind of moving into a new phase. But it kind of does sound like the old phase is like properly put in its box and the new phase is kind of laid out there, integrating with everything, which I think is really cool.
You know, I'll pop in and say that what I think is interesting, and please, I don't have to invite you to argue with me if you disagree, because I know that you will, which is why I love you people. But you know, we talk a lot about AI, and one of the comments that I hear on the regular as it relates to Amazon is that Amazon is really lagging behind. And Amazon's AI story is not very compelling, or where is Amazon on the AI front? And I think that this and what Amazon is doing with contact center, you know, I would much rather hear less about all the AI solutions that are really kind of talk right now, and see something like what they've rolled out with the Amazon Connect, which is, you know, this coverage across all of your environment, and trying to get rid of people who have the piecemeal tech stack here, and spreading this out across your whole environment, but also allowing you to really control costs. And I think that's the thing right now that so many people are interested in, because cloud costs keep rising and the cost to run AI models is rising, and people are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I liked seeing this and making these AI capabilities accessible, you know, across the landscape, with pricing that is predictable. It's kind of already built into your instance. I like seeing this. I think this is a smart move, and I think this is a way that Amazon can say, you know, we aren't sitting on our hands here. We're doing some pretty cool stuff.
I would love to agree with everything that Shelly said, but I'm definitely going to agree with the first part, which is people have been saying, where is Amazon on the AI front, right? Amazon is really behind. But if you look back at where Amazon was with AI and with ML and with TensorFlow like 10 or 15 years ago,
Yeah.
They were doing stuff that nobody else were doing. Problem was they were doing it for the developer audience. When we start talking about CX and AI in the contact center, it cannot be a, here you go, developers, you know,
figure it out,
build a house out of an acorn and a hunk of steel, right? It has to be more turnkey integrated for the business user, where they're not spending months and months figuring out how to tool, integrate, put guardrails around. They need a much more low cost, low risk kind of turnkey solution. So I think it's great that Amazon is moving in this direction.
Well, Liz, and you know, I would like your thoughts. I'm gonna, because I know you're ready to share them, but I would like your thoughts specific to, before we started this recording, we were all talking about agentic and how, you know, people struggle with how to define agentic. And one of the pieces of this value prop that I like particularly is that what AWS is doing, or what Amazon is doing, is automating the experience with continuous modeling and AI model improvements and training methodologies that are ongoing. Right. And you're getting agentic qualities, and it's helping you down the road too agentic while you might not even know it. So Liz, weigh in on that.
I think that the announcement, and I think that Amazon and Connect have keyed on a couple things, and all three of you have mentioned it, right? There is a growing frustration amongst customers that AI has this massive bow and massive package. It's like this gift that's supposed to keep giving, right? And it's going to change your life. It's going to change humanity. And then people go and look at the value, and they go look at the return, and they're like, okay, when?
Yeah.
Like,
when do I measure
is it
this?
Start? Yeah. When is this going to change my life? Because what it did was add a lot of integration costs. What it did is add massive storage costs. What it did was add all these tokens. And I got a token over here, and I got a fungible thing over here. And then I got consumption over there. And organizations are really starting to realize that while everyone has deployed some form or format of AI, it really feels like especially in the contact center, it feels like the AI we've had for a really long time. We just called it IVA or IVR, right? It feels a lot of the same, and it's not driving any of the new value. And now this new conversation around agentic has got a lot of people confused because they're like, what's agentic? And people aren't defining it. Adobe did a great job last week of defining it, but defining it for the North Star that will be agentic for Adobe. Right. I'm here, with Zendesk, and they're trying to also define that. I think the question that people have been pushing AWS and Amazon on has been, for so long, they have been perceived as the AI leader, leading with ML, leading with NLP, leading with so many processes that Amazon customers, us, shopping on Prime, like that we've been able to experience, whether it's recommendations, whether it's next best action, et cetera, et cetera. If we've had to engage with service, we've experienced digital self-service, and we've seen that come to life in V1 of Connect, right? But as everyone is now talking about agentic, which should be immersive, it should be self-healing and self-learning, but it also has to have reasoning, right? It also has to be able to follow the complexity of human conversation and human engagement, and we're not seeing a lot of that. We're certainly not seeing a lot of that in Amazon. We're not seeing a lot of that from AWS, but what we're seeing are the building blocks. And while my 8-year-old has already grown out of the time of really enjoying building blocks, she still wants to see the instructions on the Legos, right? Like, she wants to build the complex Lego kit, but she wants the directions. She needs some help doing it. She needs, that's great that that's the end vision, but don't hand me a bag of green things. And I think that that's what a lot of Amazon customers have been kind of coming up against. That's why you're starting to see a lot of, especially in contact center, a lot of organizations, one that is planning to be acquired, quite frankly, by Zendesk, that is a wrapper around the complexity of AWS and is a new CCaaS from someone like Local Measure.
Right.
They are finding a way to bring in these CCaaS tools by eliminating a lot of the complexity that going alone with AWS has originally provided. This 2.0 release, though, kind of takes a lot of the wind out of some of those sails. Not entirely, but certainly some of it, because it really gives that pathway and it really gives that out-of-the-box nature. But I think the biggest thing that it does is kind of makes this really big admission that, hey, up until now, you have had to go this alone with a picture of a dream and a big bag of blocks. And now we're going to pull all of this together for you, which I think is the right move for Amazon, quite frankly. I think it's the right move for AWS. I do say that I think it is a bit unfair when we all poke Amazon around how behind they've been on AI, because when you look at things like Bedrock, when you look at where they've been pulling models together, where they've been allowing those data scientists to run with that dream, that's actually been quite ahead of its time for a lot of those things. It's just we mere mortals. If I'm standing up a contact center, I don't know what to do with it, right? So I don't know what bring my own model means. I'm like, great, I can bring my own burger. But so I think that they're starting to bridge that gap, which is the right move.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with that. I had some conversations with Amazon at Enterprise Connect, and one of the things they emphasized was that the idea of moving to low-code, no-code ways of interacting with the new platform is firmly on their roadmap, right? They acknowledge that, you're selling this contact center to, what did they say, 10,000 seats is a good number, but it's not a great number, to these big companies. they have some of these capabilities, but you're still trying to sell what is becoming a more and more complex platform. You need to be able to speak to it and get answers on how to put it together in a way where the platform is helping you do those things. So then you have that message of, it's not just about, as you say, the dream and the building blocks. It's telling the system, this is what I want. And it says, okay, here's a step-by-step instruction on how to build that. And it's not as complicated as it was 5 years ago because we've streamlined the process as well. And then eventually someone who doesn't have the technical skills can do it, but we're still far away from that. But at least it will help you get to where you want to be. And then the pressure on the tech team to get it right and build that gargantuan contact center with all the difficulty starts to reduce a little, which I think you've hit the nail on the head is a key step in making this platform more interactable and utilizing the features that they have got on the back end somewhere, but make it work, you know?
I was going to say, I think it reflects to something we're seeing more broadly in the market, right? Which is 2 years ago, everybody was going to build their own LLM.
Remember that?
All of that, you know, IT was going to take on these projects, and they spent a hell of a lot of money and a lot that and they never got to something that actually works, right? So I think we're seeing that shift reflected in the market as well. Well, the line of business folks are saying, yeah, I'm not waiting another 12 months for you to try to come up with a pilot that shows maybe I'm accurate 50% of the time, right? I want the vendor to take on some of the risk. I want the vendor to put some of these pieces together so that we can actually get something out there working that is not just more cost effective and cost predictable to build, but to manage over time.
Right. Well,
and I can't tell you how many customers love Amazon's, the AWS mindset of turn it on, use it, experiment with it, build with it, see how it works for your business, and then turn it off. And you're just charged for that. The predictability, I think, Shelly, you brought that up. It is such a huge part of why customers are like, hey, AWS, we need you to innovate. Like, this was not AWS was sitting around being like, we did such a great job the first time. Let's think about what to do the second time. Like, this was customer-led innovation. And you want to talk about their largest customer is themselves, right? The AWS, like Connect's largest customer is Amazon. What better place to go in and say, hey, agents, what did we not get? What did we not get perfect the first time around with all of this AI stuff? And so you start to see that in things like screen record, right? Like, you start to see it in these really functional yet really smart places where they've added AI in a way that is around efficiency for the business, not just efficiency for one person. And I think where we've been focusing a lot in the contact center has been applying AI to make one person or a team or a row of agents more efficient, right? Because then we could fire the next row of agents. That was this very kind of naive discussion in the very beginning of all of this. And I think what the discussion now that Amazon wants to lead and wants to be, the cornerstone of is, no, this is about the business gaining efficiency. This is about the cost to the business, but it's also about your customer. Exactly. Like, you get what you get and you don't get upset is kind of been the model for AI for this time. And they're not getting a lot. So this 2.0 release, it's got the functionality, it's got the AI that's usable, and it's got solutions that you can stand up quickly and get rolling on. That's what people want to do.
And I'll add one last point before we move on. I think Amazon was listening on the support front, and each one of you mentioned support during this conversation. And one of the pillars of AWS's messaging or Amazon's messaging on this is ongoing support. And that's what customers want too. They do not want you to go, here, good luck. So I think saying that out, and that happens all the time, right? Here, good luck. But saying that out loud, really leaning on that in the messaging, I think shows that Amazon has been listening on the support front.
Yeah, absolutely. I will actually go back to the pricing conversation a little bit too, just because I remember we covered Samsung and why it chose Amazon Connect last year on the site, and it said basically what you've all said around the pricing as its core motivation. So I think that that particularly resonated with me. But I will move on, as Shelly alluded to there, to talk about Zendesk and how it acquired, as Liz mentioned earlier, Local Measure. And already yesterday, actually, it's sort of already relaunched the local measure Engage platform as Zendesk for contact center without actually closing the acquisition yet. So that's quite
wow.
interesting.
They haven't even gone through regulatory yet. It's like,
Well, maybe these are
Yeah.
low regulatory times. Maybe they're just rolling the dice there.
they're like, exactly.
I think this is interesting though, because it previously had Zendesk Voice, which was also a CCaaS solution, but for small businesses. This is something that could, over time, support the mid-market and even the enterprise as well. So it seems significant. And I know as you're there, Liz, I don't know if you maybe want to start on this one.
Yeah. I can confidently say that this is a mid-market play. I think that Zendesk very rightly understands that its ideal customer profile is in that mid-market zone. Now, these are going to be mid-market organizations that want to move quickly, and they expect to move quickly because of delivery of exceptional experience. So they do want to move into those upper echelons. But, this is not going to be a solution that's kind of coming in and going straight for the top, right? I think they see the opportunity to really take on kind of two types of organizations. Ones that are still on-prem. I mean, there's still that dream of knocking everybody off of their on-prem solutions. I think everyone in CCaaS still has that as part of their big opportunity of TAM, because if they haven't completely switched off-prem in the last 6 years, suddenly there's going to be a new rush to do it. We can have that discussion later. But I think the reality here is they're also hearing that there is a bit of a grumbling and an undercurrent across the market that not everyone is supremely happy with all of the CCaaS options that are out there. And let's be very honest about what's been happening across CCaaS. A lot of these mid-market, a lot of these enterprise organizations have been testing. They've been putting one call center on. They've been putting one line of business on. They've been putting a subset on. And they might actually be, it's how we all go to these conferences and we see the same logo on 3 different NASCAR slides, right? From 3 different vendors. And it makes us all kind of sit back and scratch our heads a little bit. And I think we've all had private conversations of like, weren't they on 7 different vendor slides? Like, what's happening over there? So it's this age of experimentation in contact center, which is something very new. Like, let's be honest about this. We haven't been able to do this type of experimentation and weighing our options in contact center. So I think people took the opportunity to do that. And what Zendesk is realizing is that, hey, some of those contracts are coming up. There might be an opportunity with a really robust, holistic offering that's based on what Zendesk introduced this past week around a resolution platform. Right, they are very focused on the fact that in contact center and in service, resolution is king and queen. Right, it is all the pieces that metrics and measurement are really based on for success, and so they really want to focus on that. And so, how does this connected ecosystem around knowledge, around your employee, around digital service desk, around self-service, but then also, yes, around voice that is, it was actually someone from AWS that called it the OG of human interaction was voice, right? I thought it was hysterical from stage.
That's true.
But here's the funny thing, and I'm staring at all the 3 of you because I can't wait to see the reaction from all 4 of your faces. What Zendesk believes it's going to bring into the market, and what they are openly calling it, is the un-CCaaS. Yeah, they want to be okay. Rebecca's expression is this that it,
the
so yes, it's the un-CCaaS is what they want to be seen as,
like
right?
the uncola and the uncarrier.
The uncarrier.
Oh my God!
Because they want to kind of be seen as this, and I don't know whether that is going to stick with the market, but what I do think is going to stick with the market is exactly what we were just talking about with Amazon Connect. Because what they believe they are getting with local measure, and what they believe that they can also get by integrating all of this into a holistic service platform that is really hyper focused on resolution, is that you're going to have payment and pricing that's based on resolution. You're going to have CCaaS that is easy to put in and prop up and move quickly with agentic services because of what local measure has wrapped around Amazon. AWS is a huge partner. They're leaning into that heavily. So I think that where they're looking to go is to knock off some of the folks who have been running these experiments and have realized, you know what, nothing
deploy
quite
this.
fits right. Yeah, it's very much like the Goldilocks, and like it's like Goldilocks and tasting all the CCaaS. Like nothing has been quite right. So maybe they need to look to a different location that has resolution and knowledge at its core, and then moving out from there.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting when you think about automation, people like Zendesk, the idea of, ticket resolution, here's a problem, do I solve it? Bringing automation directly into that kind of makes a lot of logical sense. Yeah. Customer makes a ticket, you find a way to talk to them, you solve the problem, and then follow that journey through. So that's why, as you say, it's very interesting when Zendesk comes in, they start competing with the traditional, ways of doing things with those platforms, because they come with that resolution-based approach.
Absolutely.
And I think that is a very appealing message compared to the confusion of the legacy of like seat pricing, per agent pricing, all of those things which are trying to mold themselves into how do we charge for this and then also charge for the AI, right? I think Genesys came out with you get these AI solutions, and then for every agent you get 30 credits you can use to spend on this, which is simpler than it was before they did this new announcement they did this week. But it's still like less confused than, we're building you an automated system. That automated system will can solve 100% of the queries that it tackles. So we're going to charge you per resolution because we believe in the system. So then when it solves the problem, we've designed a good system, right? There's a logic to that. There's a very powerful messaging in that pricing change. It'll be interesting to see how well it develops and rolls out.
And it's thought, I think the other thing that I'd love to point out is that they've also thought through that Zendesk and any solution that you buy isn't going to sit on an island, which I think sometimes in those kind of early days, we had a lot of vendors kind of being like, we can do it all. Like, I'm the Swiss Army knife of engagement. We all knew that was going to fail. Yeah. But, like, for example, Zendesk introduced something called Action Builder. And what it does, so like with their Agent Builder solution, you just describe your business process. And it actually builds the first iteration of the agent for you, and then you go in and tinker with it and you move things around. That's a very easy proposition for someone who doesn't have the time to become a data scientist, right? Action Builder actually goes, hey, you know what? When someone creates a ticket, I should let someone in sales know. And it's not that I should just let sales know. I should let the actual seller know. So rather than asking the agent to dip into CRM, figure out who it is, write the message, figure out if it's email or Slack, you can actually build an automation that allows that to happen and reaches out to those third-party agents. So they are understanding that this next wave of AI, especially this next wave of agentic, is going to require orchestration across all of these platforms and across all of these agent builders. And they've thought that through. I think it was a good move.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, there's so much to be said for that, all of these capabilities being directly in the Zendesk stack, no more third-party integrations. But I think to me, the value prop here is so clear. It's you've got AWS's cloud infrastructure, you've got Amazon Connect, AI-driven contact center, and you've got Amazon Bedrock, which gives you access to the advanced LLMs. And it's like, it's perfect. That's exactly what you need. Right there under this umbrella.
Excellent. All right, I'll take over then and quickly move on to our next topic. And actually, this one surprised me with the interest on our site, and that is the news that Genesys has delayed its IPO bid. So the information first broke this story, kind of with its sources suggesting that the company chose to, because of increased stock market volatility. I think at first reports suggested that Genesys wanted to spin out to become an IPO to sort of generate new funds to fuel AI investment and further investment in its product. So I think this delay is particularly interesting. And I don't know, Rebecca, maybe you want to start on this one?
Well, I'll start by stating the obvious, right? The obvious is the stock market doesn't like uncertainty, and there is so much uncertainty right now. Not just in tech, not just in the stock market, but in the world, right? So that's the obvious sort of picture. Do you want to introduce a IPO where your stock potentially fluctuates wildly based on the market? Well, no. Nobody wants to do that, right? But let's look at the other things going on here, right? We've got a lot of questioning around AI and AI valuations, right? So has that completely corrected yet? We don't know. That certainly impacts Genesys and whatever their valuation looks like, right? We also have some real shifts and changes in what we're going to do for per seat pricing for contact centers, right? As everybody navigates through those models, everyone who's trying to price and value those companies is saying, I don't know what that revenue stream looks like. Is it going to be a huge dip like we saw when companies moved to cloud and then went back up? We don't know yet. And so for Genesys and anybody else who's looking at broader sort of macro conditions in the stock market and looking at what are the micro sort of things of how an organization is going to value me, my revenue stream, which is dependent on pricing model, which is depending on a bunch of different shifts that have been pretty damaging for valuations and stock prices in the past, like when we moved from on-premise to cloud. There's a lot of moving parts there that I think are going to be a challenge for anybody looking to IPO, particularly in the CCaaS kind of contact center space right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to correct anytime soon, right? I think that when you talk about there is volatility here, certainly in North America. I mean, clearly. But that volatility isn't isolated to North America. We're seeing volatility in markets all over the world. We're seeing, AI, and I think AI's volatility in and of itself was probably going to be enough to have everyone second guess whether now was the time for an IPO. You had earnings come out where multiple organizations, and hey, I'll just say it, Salesforce being the first one to say, hey, things are slowing. Right? We had this huge explosion of excitement around Agentforce. And now we're starting to see some of that settle into people kind of going, okay, where does that go? Where does that fit? How does that move? Where is the value? And to Rebecca's point, when you start to hear those types of questions and conversations around like a cornerstone technology stock like Salesforce, you got to be sitting there wondering, oh God, what's my conversation going to be when I'm still talking about how not everyone moved off prem, but everyone's going to move off us because we said no more. So I think there's a lot of question. I do think it was a smart move to hit the pause button because there was going to be a lot more damage if they had to sink in the volatility as opposed to being able to regroup and really understand the motion and the velocity that they really do have going with a lot of the smart moves around pricing, a lot of the smart moves around the solutions and the services that they're now offering. Genesys really has evolved itself, really even over the past year, and has really put a lot of thought into their forward motion. And I think this is really just another piece of that intelligence around themselves, along with intelligence around the market. But I think that this probably had more to do with, hey, can we withstand this volatility, or should we really double down and focus in on our customers? And I like the decision.
Yeah. Well, I like it as well. And I think there's a lot to be said for the, why take on the added stress of being a publicly traded company when you can motor on just like you have been as a private company, make decisions that you need to make in a challenging market, challenging economy, and just slow this ride down a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think I'll join the chorus of voices agreeing that with the amount of volatility, it's a bit of a tricky time for an IPO. And I think as well, when you think about evaluating a company for its valuations, obviously we talked about pricing and things like that, you also look to the competitors that it's going up against and how the market is changing. And I mean, we've just finished talking about another company bringing a voice agent contact center into the marketplace to the level of which they didn't previously have one. We've seen moves from previously mentioned like Salesforce and people like that. We've seen Amazon overhauling their contact center as well. The fact is that competition in this marketplace is ramping up as well. So therefore, looking at a valuation, what an individual company is worth, becomes even more questionable because you're looking at all of these new competitors coming in and really asking the question, where's it going to settle down? And then obviously who's going to come out on top,
Right, absolutely.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, lots of really great stuff covered. There obviously the Genesys news, the Zendesk news, and of course the AWS news to start with. So I think, as I said, the great place to end today's chat. So thanks to all of our wonderful expert guests for joining me, and thanks to you all for watching. Bye for now.